We always will, but that particular brand of feudalism...
No, but he argues that it was a specifically designed institution whose sole purpose was to obliterate the existing Roman culture and to create a new culture on the ruins of that Roman culture it conquered.
And yet he still called it Roman. He tried, as we see in this map here, it was called the Holy Roman Empire, this Frankish empire that obliterated or attempted to obliterate Romanism and Roman Orthodoxy, continued to try to call itself Roman.
Of course.
And we know what Voltaire said about it. It wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it wasn't an empire.
What do you think were the primary means by which they try to accomplish that as far as obliterating the
well, the first was, you know, as Romanides discusses at great length in the book, was that was the notion of suppression of the Greek language, and the fact that by the institution of Latin as the mandatory liturgical language, the mandatory language of the worship in the church, the knowledge of Greek died out, and the Greek culture, which was indigenous to Gaul, which is now modern France, and to much of the southern part of the empire, which bordered the Mediterranean, that culture was obliterated and destroyed and replaced by a Latin culture, a culture in which Latin was the primary language. And then so the myth of the Latin West and the Greek East was born.
In other words, the Roman Empire had a heavy Hellenic presence, a heavy Greek presence in its culture.
Obviously.
Obviously, and that it was this Greek presence that Charlemagne and his Franks tried to obliterate.
And this is one of the things that, you know, which was very interesting. You know, anyone who reads the Bible knows that Paul wrote an epistle to the Romans. And, you know, one of the ironies, which never clicked till I read Romanides' book, was that Paul wrote an epistle to the Romans, to the citizens of Rome, in the Greek language, not in the Latin language.
Why would he have done that, right?
Because Greek was the language that all Romans spoke. Even if they spoke Latin or Celtic or whatever they spoke, they also most likely spoke Greek. So to be sure that they understood it, he wrote to them in Greek. So this Greek East, or Byzantine Greek East, and Latin Roman West is a fabrication of the Franks, of Charlemagne, in order to divide the Romans that he conquered in the West from the Romans that were still free in the East, in order to break any ties culturally and religiously between them as a means of oppression.
And to inherit the title of Roman Emperor, basically, or the...
Well, that was part of his, I guess that was part of his, part of the propaganda.
Right.
Those
and essentially the same propaganda is being propagated in most universities today. I mean, if you go to any university today and study history, you're going to find that they teach basically the Frankish line.
Well, let's take what's happening now in the Metropolitan Museum. You have an exhibit there of what's called the glory of Byzantium. What Father John Romanides, if he came to New York, say if he saw that banner?
Well, he would say, quite simply, there was never any place called Byzantium. There was never any empire called Byzantium. These people called themselves Romans until the day the Turks came into Constantinople and destroyed what was left of the Roman Empire.
Actually, he told me in a conversation once that they call themselves Romans where his family comes from, in Anatolia, in current-day Turkey. They called themselves Romans until they got to this country, and the quote-unquote Greeks that were already living here said, what do you mean you're Romans? You're not Romans, you're Greeks. You speak Greek, you're from Turkey, you must be Greeks. And they said, no, we're Romans. What do you mean Greeks? Greeks were Socrates and Aristotle. Then pagans.
Right.
What are you calling us, a pagan? And there were fistfights, he said. You know,
and one of the most shocking things for contemporary Greeks, for lack of a better word, at this point, so people can understand, they don't really realize when you say to them, basically, Greek is a derogatory word. Greek is not what we essentially are.
No, it's not.
They take offense to it at first, but I think after you explain it to them and you give them the historical background, they begin to realize that it was basically something fabricated Charlemagnean times, and after, in order to create that division and the breakup of a historical truth,
right.
In order to propagate.
And in fact, the language that the Roman Empire spoke, which was a
form of Greek,
they called that language Romaic, the language of the Romans.
So they consider themselves to be Romans. Could we say that Constantinople was the capital of the Roman Empire, and that Constantinople, I mean, it was politically. I mean, Constantine moved the capital of the empire from Rome to the village of Byzantium, and then it wasn't called Constantinople. It was rarely called Constantinople when he was building it, and soon after. It was always called New Rome.
New Rome.
That was the name of it, New Rome. That was the capital. It was later called the city of Constantine because he built it. So it became known as the city of Constantine.
And also, in order to kind of weed out the lies there, or the distortions, basically, I don't want to use them lies, let's just say distortions.
Well, let's call them lies.
Okay, fine, lies.
And a distortion may be unintentional, but an intentional
Okay, we can say
distortion,
intentional.
distortion is a lie.
Yes, but I just want, for the sake of the people, for example, who might be saying certain things today, who are not saying them intentionally because they basically bought into the whole theory
Right.
that has been passed on from generation to
Ignorance. They're in
generation.
ignorance,
Right.
yeah. Sincere.
You can kind of weed out with the issue of papal infallibility and primacy, actually, because you know, the whole primacy issue is misunderstood as well, based on the Christ's admonition to Peter.
Well, supposedly that Peter was going to be the prime.
On this rock I shall build my church, and the gates
Right.
of Hades shall not prevail. And the primacy of the Pope, basically based on that quote, it's not really accurate in the sense that because of the administrative significance of Rome, old Rome at the time, the Bishop of Rome did have a level of significance above the other bishops.
Place of honor.
Right. But only because of that, because of the administrative significance,
Because it was the
capital of the empire
it
at
was
the
at
time.
that time the capital of the empire
Right.
before 325 AD.
Exactly.
But in fact, you know, when they moved,
Exactly.
when Constantine moved the capital of Roman Empire from Rome to the new Rome in Constantinople, a large majority of the population of the city moved with him. If you could imagine taking the capital of this country, Washington, D.C., and by fiat deciding we're going to move it to Iowa,
Yeah, to
then they would have to take all of the administrative offices, all of the government offices, all of those civil servants, and move them en masse to this new city which was being built to house the new capital.
And that language that civil servants only know how to speak, that language would now be translated to Des Moines, in
Yes.
Iowa.
Yes.
So you're saying then that an essentially, well, let's say a Greco-Roman city,
Yes.
a Roman city with a heavy Greek undertone, a very strong Greek cultural undertone, was transplanted from Italy to the Hellespont, to the Golden Horn there, where Constantinople is today.
And in fact, that was done precisely to create a non-pagan city, to create a new Christian city, a new Christian capital for the new Christian empire.
A city built from the bottom up to the glory of God to administer His empire.
That's correct.
An empire, well, that would at least be dedicated to His honor.
And you know, it's ironic that now they call that empire which was created to dedicate to a Christian idea of a Christian nation, a multi-ethnic Christian nation. In many ways, the same ideals that the American society strives for.
Right.
Right, absolutely.
That now is called foreign. It's called Byzantine.
It's an insult. Byzantine is to be
scheme,
deceitful,
basically, a Byzantine
deceitful,
scheme.
and to be frank. Frank is to be honest and
Right.
straightforward and upfront.
And you know, it surprises me how few people actually know that there existed a Byzantine Empire, that the Roman Empire didn't cease to exist, that the entire world did not go into the Dark Ages, into the Middle Ages. That at the height, what was going on in Europe and in feudal society, with all of the Dark Ages and the loss of knowledge, the loss of culture, that in the East, the Roman Empire was thriving. There were great universities, great hospitals, great enlightenment.
In other words, the fall of the Roman Empire in 410 is what we're all taught and what most people believe happened. The Roman Empire fell.
Cessation thereof, yeah.
Yeah, 410. And that, I mean, often not often, but every now and then you'll hear about the Eastern Roman Empire. But very few people below the level of university level are ever taught that. So the propaganda and this lie, this distortion is still a part of us. It's still with us today, and that's what we're trying. That's what Father John is trying to do with his lectures and his writings, is to at least get the people who are willing to hear this to understand the truth of history. Let's get a little bit to the spirituality of what the Franks did, to the spirituality of the Romans, of the Greco-Roman world. Let's not, for the Greek people who are watching, the ethnically Greek people, let's just make it clear that we're not saying that the Greeks disappeared with Socrates and Aristotle. The pagan Greeks did it, but the culture, the classical culture of Hellas, the classical culture of the Hellenes, of the Greeks, lived on and was spread to the world through the Roman Empire. So basically the Roman Empire was a Greco or Helleno-Roman world. It was not purely Greek, it was not purely Latin. You can't say that it was a Latin West and a Greek East and that the two finally went their separate ways and that's why you had the split in the church. That's not what happened. So to the Greeks watching, we're not trying to say that Greek culture and that they're not Greeks. We're just trying to say that the Roman world was essentially